Hello and welcome back to the only show that knows exactly why you hate sand. I'm Max,
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
and this is Force for Thought. With Disney purchasing Star Wars, they have been cranking out content from movies to TV shows, live action and animated, and everything in between. I'm looking at you, live action Tarkin. So today, we're going to be discussing Star Wars since Disney has acquired them, and some of the best of what they have had to offer us, from favorite characters to our favorite movies and much more. Let's get into it, starting with best character. I'm going to go with Matthew.
Yes. Okay, so I have two for my best character. It's a bit of a cheat. I see Luke looking at me right now, not satisfied with me with my answer.
We talked about this earlier, if we were going to share our answers so that there wouldn't be any duplicates. And Matt said, no, we won't have any duplicates. And now you're picking two,
I
and you're
know,
still
okay,
saying
okay.
we won't have any duplicates?
I'm gonna go with my main one, and then I'll say I guess my the runner-up.
All right, let's go.
So the runner-up, I think, is Jyn Erso. And I don't have to dive into it just in case that's somebody else's. By looks on your faces, it's not.
It's not.
But I really like Jyn Erso. I think she does a lot for Rogue One, but then also the greater good. And I think the character arc we see with her is great in one movie. But my favorite character, since Disney has taken over, is Kanan Jarrus. I think he is my favorite Jedi. I know yours is Qui-Gon, and we don't have to talk about our favorite Jedis because that feels like a whole other episode. But
And you
I
stopped
guess-
as soon as you got to me because you don't know who mine is, do you?
No, I was gonna ask.
Luke
you.
has already made it clear that it's Qui-Gon. His is Qui-Gon.
Yes, that's why. Yeah,
Yeah.
but what is yours then?
I would have to think about it. I
Yeah,
really don't
I
know.
think Kanan is because I feel like in the original trilogy I really like Luke, but I was like when I was a kid growing up I was like, oh, I maybe like Han better, but I think I like Luke overall. But yes, Kanan Jarrus is my answer for my favorite character since Disney has acquired Lucasfilm.
And I think they handled him really well, too, with his death and how they killed him off.
Yep.
Because every time there is a Jedi that is revealed to have survived Order 66, the first question anyone in the fandom has is, okay, where were they during A New Hope, Empire Return? Like,
Yeah.
where were they during all of these events? And I feel like so far they've done a very good job of addressing all of those things. And Kanan, obviously, they handled very well by the fact that he dies. And you don't expect it to from an animated show. Like, I've heard a lot of people
Yep.
joke about like showing somebody Rebels for the first time and having someone point out, like, oh yeah, I showed my friend Rebels, and he said, oh, who's this Kanan guy? Because he's a Jedi, but he wasn't in A New Hope.
Yeah,
And so it's
It's-
like,
yeah.
you'll get there.
Cobbling together two more quick thoughts. I'll probably cut most of this, and I will actually cut this for Jake Taylor. But I think Kanan. I didn't realize I like Kanan so much. I mean, I loved him in Rebels, obviously, but then once he appears in Bad Batch, just for that little bit in the first episode of season 1, I think
Back
that
when he was Caleb Doom.
yeah, it really made me excited to be like, oh, actually, I think that actually might be my favorite. Like re-seeing him when he's younger, kind of reignited it, and then also his death in season 4 of Rebels is so good. And then they don't save it for the finale. Obviously, it's what, 2
Yeah.
episodes, maybe 3 episodes prior, and I think that death and his sacrifice is the ultimate Jedi thing to do.
Yeah, I think he's definitely up there for one of the coolest character deaths in all of Star Wars.
And
I
you
really
buy that.
like his character and how they differentiate him from Kanan the Jedi and Kanan the Rebel. Like a lesser version of Rebels would have gone on and made Kanan the de facto general of the rebellion, as it were, in the show, not to mention the leader of the Ghost Crew, and I really like that they let other characters fill those roles and let Kanan focus on being a Jedi and a Jedi Master.
I think you also just like struck something in me, like what I'm trying to like decipher, and I think it is that combo of Kanan the Jedi versus Kanan the Rebel, and I think that is something that I like a lot. Like I love Obi-Wan, but like at the same time, he is strictly a Jedi and adheres to all of those rules, which I think sours it a little bit for me because I do love that gray area consistently. Anyway, Luke.
My favorite character since Disney started running the show in 2014 is Kylo Ren. I think that his
That's what I thought Matt was going to say when he said technically it's 2.
I
That's
mean,
very funny.
I think that is funny. I'm surprised Matt didn't say it also, just because I think Kylo Ren is so clearly the front runner in my mind. I'm surprised you guys don't feel the same. But even from the very beginning, The Force Awakens, just his design, and I'll never forget the first time in theaters when he removed his mask and how striking that visual was, because he's just a normal guy. Like, he does not look intimidating or, badass or anything like his mask does, and that was just so captivating. And then The Last Jedi I absolutely love, and then his character arc in The Rise of Skywalker just brings it all together. And yeah, Kylo Ren by a mile, honestly.
I really do like Kylo Ren as well. I think that's fun. I mean, I'm really glad you like that moment when he takes his helmet off, because I feel like there was so much anticipation around that specific moment. And then I think when he does take it off, most people's response is like, "Oh yeah, it's just Adam Driver," but like somehow Adam Driver looks 10 years younger than he actually is, and he looks like a
He
child.
looked like a child in that
He
scene.
did,
Yeah.
and I think it's great when by the end of it, I don't even know how or why. It's not like he had like stubble in Rise of Skywalker or anything, but he literally looks older. I mean, he obviously is significantly older from when
Yeah,
Force
that's
Awakens.
interesting. I've never thought about it like that, but it does. It shows like it's not the years, it's the miles for his character's
Yeah.
aging. Like he goes through some stuff, and that really
Mhm.
ages him up, and that just goes to compliment Adam Driver's performance. Really, that he can portray maturity not through any physicality,
Yeah.
but just through his acting.
I think iconography is also very important, and Kylo Ren has two of the most important aspects, which are the helmet, which is awesome. It's a great helmet design, as well as the lightsaber. I'll never forget that first trailer when they revealed that lightsaber and just how much conversation the
good.
crossguard itself raised. And it's awesome too, because if you like actually watch him fight, he utilizes that crossguard in his fighting, and it's really cool. And it's like it's always a very tiny moment, but whenever he does use it, I always kind of like jump a little bit. I'm like, oh, there it is, he used
Yeah.
it. But also going back to the other character, Ben Solo, I feel like he also I feel like Adam Driver did an amazing job with Ben Solo for the 2 minutes that he got to be him. Like you just see his body language change.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's something that you don't realize when you're watching just Kylo Ren until you see Ben Solo, and then you're like, oh wow, he was like, I don't know how to describe
He's
it.
a little
Like, he
more
was
loose
doing
as
a
Ben
whole-
Solo. He's
Yeah.
walking more like
his posture is more
Yes.
relaxed. Yeah.
yeah. He's completely different. I
Yeah,
mean, he
when
looks
he's
like
Kylo Ren, he's like hunched forward and he's like constantly like leaning into it and
he
everything.
looks like the First Order is consistently watching him, like all the time. Like he looks like he's under a microscope. Versus when he's Ben Solo for just those few minutes, he is loose, he is free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Adam Driver also is an amazing actor, and so obviously what he brings to both of those roles consistently throughout those 3 movies is great.
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell, or unless Luke, do you have anything else to say? Kylo Ren, very
no,
cool.
No, I think we're ready to move on.
All right.
So kind of similar to what I was saying about the iconography, I chose Din Djarin, the Mandalorian himself, partially because, like I said, the iconography, I like his helmet a lot. I think he is really cool. Obviously, everyone likes to cosplay him, but also I just really appreciate everything that character has done for the entire franchise, starting the entire Mandoverse and everything that's spawning out of it. Like, I feel like... obviously episodes 7, 8, and 9 were huge hits. People loved them, but I feel like it wasn't until Mandalorian where it finally started to feel like this universe had some more life in it and some more mileage. So kind of from a meta standpoint, I guess.
How do you feel about him as an actual character, though?
Well-
Because that's not my biggest gripe. But
Before we get into that, I
Yes.
do want to comment on the meta-analysis of it, that in
Yeah.
2019, like, it gets lost how much was writing on The Mandalorian. Like,
Yeah.
there were talks that, like, Star Wars wouldn't work as live action and television, and it should be saved for the big screen, and there was so much writing on The Mandalorian to really nail that first episode, honestly, let alone the first season.
Yeah.
And they absolutely did, and they've spawned so much success and great creations since then, and it's all thanks to Din Djarin.
Yeah, and I something that Matt and I have talked about in the past is how Tamara Morrison, who plays Boba Fett's, upset because basically the Mandalorian was supposed to be Boba Fett, but they wanted it to be something new. And I feel like that's like a common theory. I think did Tamara even say that himself?
I
if
don't
I'm
think
pronouncing
Tim has
his
said
name
that.
right.
I think he was just aggravated. I think he said something about them stealing it, though, right? Or stealing the show? I
It's
don't
hard
know.
to know because I feel like a lot of fans think that. Like a lot of people are like, so that was obviously supposed to be Boba Fett, right? So it's like a common theory, but I disagree with it. I think that it would not have been the same had it been Boba Fett. I think you needed a new character to be able to have that character
Well,
arc.
Backstory alone, we know Boba Fett's backstory, so that doesn't work right there. I mean, obviously it could be tailored, I guess, but we've seen him in Rebels, we've seen him in
Yeah.
in Clone
And
Wars,
that mystery is
so
a very important aspect to his character, right? The first time
yeah.
you see him and you don't even see his face until the last episode of
Yeah.
the first season. And yeah.
I think the idea of him being Boba Fett because he has the Mandalorian armor is cool, right? Because you just want to see Boba Fett be cool and not die in a Starlight Pit by accidentally getting hit by Han Solo
We haven't seen Boba Fett in Rebels.
in Clone Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, when he's 18. But like even then, I feel like it wouldn't make sense. I think they kind of villainize him a little bit in that show, more so. He has that softer side, but he definitely is in that softer. I don't know. I mean, I guess that may be a better arc. Anyway, yeah, Din Djarin. I like Din Djarin a lot. Obviously, I think I like what he represents more than I actually like the character. I mean, he's obviously very cool. He's got a lot of swagger. He's, speaks very minimally.
That's a good point. I agree. I like what he represents more than
Yeah.
I like the character.
Because he's also just like the worst fighter, which I think we've talked about.
The worst what?
Fighter. Like he never.
It's because
He
has
takes a lot of
Beskar
Ls.
armor. He just tanks
Consistently.
everything.
He just, he's just always getting saved. But which is totally fine because every character needs to, but that's a bigger problem. But like again, I really like Din Djarin. There's no gripes against him. Besides, I like him definitely better as a what he represents than the character himself. I like Kanan the best.
All right, next we're going to move on to the best scene. Luke, I'll go to you first.
The best scene since 2014 is also an easy one in my mind. It is the throne room scene from The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
The way it is framed, the way it impacts Rey and Kylo Ren's character arcs together at the same time, like that's one of the most cherished memories of mine in the theaters is when that single uncut frame of the lightsaber going through Snoke and then coming forward and Rey catching it and coming up into frame. That is a moment that just lives in my mind every day.
And
And
I think
everything
about it
slows
often.
down, and then they go back to back, and then they start
Mhm.
fighting all 6 of them at the same time.
I remember
They're
being in that
so
theater with
good.
you and the freak out. It's so. I mean, I rewatching the sequel trilogy, which I realized listening to these back to back, I say almost every episode, but to you guys, I'm like refreshing. So it makes sense in normal conversation, but probably not to bring up consistently. But like, it just makes your heart drop
Mm-hmm.
every time you watch that scene.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And I am a big Last Jedi apologist. I love The Last Jedi, and it always upsets me when people try to nitpick that scene by being like, oh, look at the choreography, though, of like what they're doing in the middle of their fights. Like, it makes no sense. And I'm like, and usually the irony is that the people that are saying it are the people that are like, oh, but I like the prequels, though, but the prequels are different. It's like, no, it's not. Go back and watch the prequels. Like, the fighting style in The Last Jedi in the throne room
Yeah.
is the exact same as all of the prequel fights in all of the movies, 1, 2, and 3, with all of their unnecessary spins, flips, jumps, twirls, and everything. Like, it's just...
That's the same thing. That's is what makes me so hot about it. The topic is like, have you seen A New Hope? Have you seen Alec Guinness face Vader? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Like, you didn't like A New Hope because the saber fight was amazing, right? Yes, you can learn and grow, and technology advances, and you can do a lot more in the current day. But it's like at the core of Star Wars, if you're nitpicking the fight choreography,
Yeah.
there's a bigger problem there.
Yeah, I agree. And I would be remiss also if I didn't mention Andy Serkis's performance in this scene. He doesn't get enough credit because everyone thinks of him as just the mocap guy, but
Mhm.
his voice alone, which I guess kind of plays into the being just a mocap guy,
No,
but his
it's
his
good.
voice is just so amazing, and every single thing he says brings me to the edge of my seat. That
Mhm.
whole scene.
You can hear like every cigar he's ever had, like the way he's talking. It's like every whiskey, every cigar, which is so funny.
Matt, hit us with your favorite
Yes.
scene.
So once again, I was debating between two, and it's not. It's also the through line of Rogue One. I loved the Vader scene at the end, right before.
That was my runner-up.
Yeah, it's my runner-up.
Yep,
So
that's a
I
good
just
one.
wanted to mention that because it's so good, and it's really like the cherry on top of that movie. Followed by Max's favorite quote or second favorite quote of all time, "Hope." But my favorite.
It was an honorable mention.
My favorite scene is from The Mandalorian. It's from season 2, episode 8, when Grogu goes with Luke Skywalker. I think that's the best scene. There is something very nostalgic about it, just because we see Luke Skywalker. That reveal, I mean, that was maybe top 5 reveals I've ever seen. I did not see that coming whatsoever. And then not only that, but to have Din Djarin remove his helmet around everybody for Grogu, and then Grogu also going with Luke, and then getting that little bit of R2. There's a lot of emotion packed in that. And I think we all talk about like how Star Wars is about like loss and sacrifice consistently. And I think Din Djarin has become attached to Grogu, and it's like anything. It's like you guys with your kids, or like me with my cat. It's like if you had to like give that up for the greater good, it's like that strikes a chord. And I think they do it in such a way that you can put yourself there while also wanting Grogu to go with Luke, because you know Luke, you trust Luke, you want to see what he can do. And so it is the most bittersweet moment. And then once that door closes, and then Luke, R2, and Grogu go off on their own, and then you have Mando standing with a Bo-Katan and Cara Dune and everybody else in that cockpit Star Destroyer.
Imperial light cruiser.
The bridge.
Yeah, on the bridge. When they're on the bridge, they're just standing there in silence because they have no
Yeah.
idea what's next and they have no idea what's to come. And I think that's the best scene that has happened in Star Wars since Disney took over.
Yeah. No,
That's
no
a good
arguments for me.
selection.
Yeah,
No,
it's
yeah.
a good choice. I always think about that scene and the fact that Boba Fett was present, but his job was basically to drop them off in the ship and then fly away as a distraction. And I always think about that
Yeah.
because had their plans just been a little bit differently and Boba Fett was there too, how funny that interaction would have been between him and Luke when
That would have
when
been
Luke sees him and he's like,
Mhm.
hey, wait a minute, are you?
that would really funny. I would love to include a little scene, like a little behind the scenes thing or after credit scene with Chewie and Han flying the Falcon away, and they see Boba Fett's ship, and he's like, "Boba Fett, where's Boba Fett?" One can dream.
Like in a comedy movie where like two cars pass each other
Yes.
and they kind of like lock eyes as they slowly pass each other on the road. They're
But
like,
only
"What
Chewie
the-"
sees it.
Whenever I rewatch that episode, I always think I saw. I think it was a Reddit post a while ago when it probably came out, telling that episode story as if it was a tabletop role playing game. And the guy playing Boba Fett is like, "All right, I drop everyone off, and I actually just got a call. I have to leave right now." And the game master's like, "All right, just leave." Boba Fett flies away.
That's very funny because that's the thing too. I was gonna say like, I'm glad we all kept our scenes pretty concise because yours is pretty tight. But I mean, like in mine, it's like, do I include when Luke the X-wing flies into the ship? Do I
I
include
know,
even
yeah,
the
that's
hallway
all
scene?
such a
I'm not
massive
even
moment.
including that. But I mean, that just amplifies it more. But specifically, the scene when he enters the bridge
Mhm.
Yeah.
is so good.
I think you made the right choice, though. The culmination of Din Djarin's character arc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Luke.
Well, my favorite scene, if you've listened to our favorite quotes episode, you might know where this is going, but it's from a little TV show called Andor. The episode is called Narkina 5. It is a
Yep.
prison in which Andor is part of a prison breakout led by Kino Loy himself.
Yeah.
And it is to me by far and away the best scene in all of Star Wars because you have Kino Loy,
Yeah.
this man who made it very clear that he cares about no one but himself, forced to lead a little rebellion within this prison, knowing that it required him to sacrifice himself, but the viewer didn't know that until the very end when they're about to jump into the water and he says that he can't swim. It is a moment that will always break my heart and that I always think about, and it is a moment that if I have 15 minutes to kill, I will go on Disney Plus and I'll jump to that episode and I will watch that scene, as I will the throne room scene from Last Jedi. I watch that scene quite a bit, actually.
Me too.
It's
Me
a lot
too.
of fun. But I think that scene and the emotion in that personal sacrifice by Kino Loy makes it, to me, not even close. I think the hallway scene with Darth Vader was probably my runner-up, but I also had the Last Jedi throne room scene up there too. But no, it's the breakout of Narkina 5 with Kino Loy.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
That I can't swim moment also is very well staged, and how like all these prisoners are seeing the outside for like the first time in
Yeah.
probably years, and like the wind's blowing in their hair and it's bright and it's so chaotic, and Andor turns back and just barely doesn't have enough time to see what's going on. And yeah, I agree, that's a great selection.
You nailed it, Max. I 1000% agree. It is one of the best scenes in Star Wars of all time, not even just when Disney took over.
And it has one of the best quotes of all time.
That's interesting. I don't want to rehash an older episode, but I think this does almost prove Matthew's point that is not a quote, it is a moment.
What?
because-
Yes, thank you, Luke. I'm going to insert just what we said last episode
Absolutely
right
not.
here.
Absolutely not. This okay. Well,
It's an amazing. Well, also, when are you counting your scene? At what point is it
I
starting?
thought about that
'Cause
when
that's
you
what
said,
I-
"Oh, we're picking pretty
Yeah.
tight scenes." I'm picking like half an episode.
I also, for some reason,
if I had to-
assumed you went already.
If I had to narrow it down, I would say the scene where they start jumping in the water, the
Okay.
very end of the breakout.
that is the scene. Yeah.
When Cassian says to Melshi, I believe, that no matter what happens, we made it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a
Yes.
great moment.
Yeah. Okay. That's a tight scene. I mean, you can literally include the full episode too, that lead up. But yes.
Okay. Next, we are going to do our favorite TV show, and let's start with Matt.
My favorite TV show it's going to be Luke's as well. It's 1000% Andor, which I think is one of the best things, if not the best thing, Disney has done since acquiring Lucasfilm. Andor, I don't know if I said this on the podcast yet, but I've told Max this before, is that I think Mandalorian is everything I want Star Wars to be fan service wise, and Andor is everything I didn't know I want Star Wars yet to be, which is I think what Star Wars should be in general, is
That's a
consistently
great way of
moving
saying it.
the story forward, consistently moving themes forward, seeing things we've never seen before, seeing the intricacies, even seeing the guy ringing the bells in the town. It's like
the time grappler.
those little things.
Is
I
that
think
what he's called? I've never heard
Yeah.
that.
that's
Interesting.
a very cool title, and in that universe, I'd love to be the time grappler. But I feel like just seeing all those intricacies really builds the world out, and I think that's what I want more of consistently. And then not only that, we have like implied sex in Andor, which we've never gotten in Star Wars. Not it's like a massive deal, but like we all probably were like, whoa,
Yeah.
like it's
Gay
it-
people.
It's
A
yeah,
lot of firsts.
There's a lot of firsts. I think that's in Rise of Skywalker though. There's a lesbian couple.
Barely.
True.
Technically, yes.
True. Sandwich against Lin-Manuel Miranda's
If you
cameo.
pause it at the right moment, you can
Yeah.
see it in the background.
But I think there's a lot of firsts, exactly. And it just kind of expands the world. It has a darker tone. It has and also to kind of caveat this a little bit, and then I'll move on, but Andor, I think, is my least favorite part of Rogue One. I think he's my least favorite character out of the whole bunch. And when it was announced, I wasn't thrilled. I was like, this character. And then within the first 10 minutes, completely changed my mind and completely gave a new context to Rogue One. And then not only that, set up a character that I realized I had really no knowledge about. And I was so excited to see what he does, and I still am for those remaining 12 episodes.
Yeah.
So Andor is my favorite.
I don't want to beat on a dead horse, so to speak. So I'll keep this brief because that's also my favorite.
No,
And I think
beat on
the
the dead
most,
horse.
the most remarkable thing, not the most remarkable thing, but the only thing I'll say right now is in a saga built around hope,
Mm-hmm.
the most hopeful character is all of a sudden this nerdy little third-rate Imperial wannabe that wants to date Dedra.
Yeah.
That is just hilarious
Who
to
has
me.
to go home to his mom?
Yeah.
had to go back live with his mom's house, just eating cereal one morning.
Right, just talking about Uncle Arlo and his massive aspirations and hopeful future.
Yeah.
Everything you're saying sounds like a Judd Apatow movie. From the producers of Knocked Up brings Andor.
That's funny. If I were being really honest with myself, I think the answer is Andor. However, I wanted to provide a different perspective, so
I think it's valid too.
I was gonna say my favorite is kind of a technicality, but I'm gonna say the Clone Wars, the final season.
Okay.
Because when they came back and they announced that they were bringing back the Clone Wars, it felt like it felt like they weren't going to do everything their way or the highway. They were going to pay some respect to some of the other existing property, because when Disney acquired everything, they immediately decanonized everything. They took all of the legends, all of the other books and comics and everything, and they said, okay, none of that applies anymore. But they did keep Clone Wars, and that was really important because, like I said, I feel like it would have been really easy for Disney to just be like, okay, well,
Yeah.
this is how we're doing it now. I know there's rumors. I don't know if it's ever been confirmed or not, but when Disney first purchased Lucasfilm, that George Lucas had a treatment for his versions of episodes 7, 8, and 9, and he gave it to them. And supposedly they didn't follow it at all. They just did their own thing, which, again, I can't blame Disney. I feel like it's really easy for them to be like, okay, thanks, George. Like, but we have this property now. It's ours. We're going to do things our way. But yet Clone Wars was kind of the one thing where they were like, you know what, we're gonna bring that back. We're gonna finish it. It was a great story that was left untold. And we have faith in Dave Filoni, and we're going to give him the reins to do what he wants. It is, but outside of all that, it's also just an incredible season of TV, because you have 3 story arcs in it. You got the first story arc, which is the Bad Batch, which was the introduction of them, who later went on to have their own TV show, which is also a lot of fun and would probably also be in my top 3 or 4 TV shows right now, even though that's also an animated show. And then you had the story with the Martell sisters, which a lot of people poo-pooed, but it really helped flesh out Ahsoka's storyline in order to make it all the more rewarding in the third storyline when she eventually came back and you saw the Siege of Mandalore, and it overlapped with the events of Revenge of the Sith. And I've seen so many super edits of Revenge of the Sith intertwined with the Clone Wars, the final season, the Siege of Mandalore arc, and it's just so great. And it brings a satisfying conclusion to Ahsoka's storyline, Maul's storyline. Yeah.
I think that is incredibly valid too, because I feel like some people could say it started obviously not under Disney, but like you said, season 7 specifically feels like its own thing. It's told in a very different way in the fact that it does have like 3 distinct arcs as well. And I think beyond that, I think it says a lot that Disney kept Clone Wars to go forward with and kind of nixed almost everything else. But yes, I think that's a great choice as well.
Yeah, because like I said, a lot of people give Disney crap, like, oh, they don't care about the fans, all they care about is making money. But I feel like that's like my argument to the contrary. Like, no, they could have just got rid of Clone Wars along with everything else, but they said, like, you know what, this means a lot to the fans, and this fits with our version of what we want the story to be going forward. And they had to decanonize, if not everything, almost everything, because, you know, clearly they were going to want to build out this universe more in a new way. So
Yeah.
it would have been just, you know, feasibly not practical to be able to keep every single book that was written canon and still tell new stories within that universe.
Well, there's so much contradictory storytelling, I think, within those two, because you have a mass amount of time.
I really like the Clone Wars season 7 for a lot of reasons, but it's interesting thinking about the legacy of George Lucas because he's not a tremendous filmmaker in broad strokes. He has his moments. He's great.
Matt's getting his boxing gloves on.
He's great
No,
at writing stories, but in terms of like actually making and producing content, it's only okay. And Dave Filoni was talking about at a Celebration, it must have been 2022, about how George Lucas was always so committed to pushing the technology of filmmaking forward, which he's done a great job with. You know, the first CG character, the first film shot entirely digitally, and then one of the first 3D animated series. And Dave Filoni was talking about how it's such a risky endeavor to keep pushing it forward when it's not ready, but it's never going to be ready unless someone does it.
Yeah.
And by the end of the Clone Wars, it's done and it's really, really good. And they've, you know, mastered the technology. And he said, like, so of course it's the best episodes of the Clone Wars because we finally got really good at it and developed the technology.
But they continue to develop and maybe not new technology, but incorporate different technology because in the Siege of Mandalore, they brought back Ray Park, thank you, to mocap as Darth Maul, and you can see it in some of the choreography when he fights Ahsoka, like how he does this weird like he kicks off the air almost when he jumps.
The leg kick with right foot with right strike. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It looks like the human equivalent of trying to double jump, but it's like a very Ray Park thing to do, and like he does it in the Phantom Menace, and it's very iconic. And as soon as I see that, like that's always the moment where I'm like, oh yeah, there's a person in there.
I think. Sorry, go on. You're probably gonna say something more relevant to what we're talking about.
No, I was just gonna say that I agree. I think Clone Wars has always kept that tradition alive of incorporating new technology and trying different things.
Yeah, I think going to the George Lucas filmmaking thing, I 1000% agree. Like,
All right. I didn't think we were.
in a certain way, I think he's one of those people that is there at the wrong time at the wrong place, and yet the exact right place and the exact right person, because he reminds me a lot of like a James Cameron. James Cameron, I think, is a better director, but he's consistently trying to push the envelope. George Lucas was a consistent forward thinker, and I think filmmaking for him slows him down. It's a long process, specifically in the 70s and 80s. It takes a long time. And I think where his interests lay were more or less he created a full world. And I think if he wasn't limited to Star Wars, if it wasn't so big, he could have done more movies. But I think he is serving the purpose of the greater good of Star Wars and what it can go. And then also we should at some point talk about Light and Magic, the documentary on Disney Plus, which I think might be my favorite documentary of all time.
Yeah, it's good.
I was just about to bring up ILM. Like George Lucas created Star Wars and has this whole massive legacy, and then also he just casually made the most technologically advanced visual effects company for the last 45 years.
Yeah.
Which also happened to spawn off some of the other most technologically advanced inventions, like everything that came out of ILM, like Pixar and Photoshop. Yeah.
It blows my mind. And I think this is my force for thought for the episode. Maybe we can repeat this at the end. But if the greatest film of all time, like if that director directs the greatest film of all time, is that the best director of all time? Or did that person just per chance direct the best movie of all time? Because to me, there's people always say Francis Ford Coppola is the best director because he directed Godfather Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, but usually people don't include that for obvious reasons. So is he the best director of all time? In which my answer would be no, but that's
I agree. No, I think to be the best of anything of all time, you have to be more than just a couple great projects. You have to be consistent.
It's
for
consistency.
years or decades.
I agree. That's my force for thought for later.
Interesting. All right. Well, before we get into our last topic here, I want to do a couple speed rounds real quick.
Let's do it.
Doing just a couple of the more vain aspects of design. We're going to start with trooper design. Luke, what was your favorite trooper design?
There are a lot of options, and I just really want to highlight this one, even if it might not be my favorite. I'm going to bring it up now. The First Order Stormtrooper, I think, does not get the proper credit it deserves because it's the whole sequel trilogy, and especially The Force Awakens, is just such a retread of the original trilogy, and I feel like a lot of people don't give it as much credit as it deserves because of that. But the First Order Stormtrooper looks like what the Stormtroopers should have looked like in the original trilogy. Like their armor, it's so similar, and so it sounds really nitpicky, but they look like the Stormtroopers, just stronger and meaner, which is what they always should have looked like.
Yeah.
Interesting. I prefer the original trilogy Stormtroopers, but I love the First Order troopers as well. I think that first shot of seeing them in that shaky cargo ship, the drop ship, in the trailer for the first time was mind-blowing.
Yeah, so I guess it's also important just the way they're portrayed, but I think their design alone also is just such an advancement from the original Stormtrooper.
But still, like you said, like feeling natural. Like it felt like the next evolutionary step in this progression.
Yes.
I think that's the thing. I think we needed the originals to get to this point as well.
Yeah, exactly. Even though, because I would disagree with you when you said that the Imperial Stormtroopers are your favorite of the Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Or you said you liked it better than First Order. I forget what you just said.
Yeah.
Because to me, there's like an evolution of like Phase 1 Clone Trooper, Phase 2 Clone Trooper, Imperial Stormtrooper, First Order Stormtrooper.
Sure.
And the Imperial Stormtrooper is probably my least favorite of those four because I really like the Clone Trooper helmets. But I agree that I like when I look at the four of those all next to each other, they feel like a very natural evolution.
I agree.
And I'll segue that into my favorite trooper design, which is going back to the final season of the Clone Wars. I'm going with the 332nd Clone Trooper design, where you had the Phase 2 Clone Trooper helmets painted to match Ahsoka's face tattoos. Are they tattoos or facial markings?
I think they're facial markings.
Facial markings. But yeah, I think it just looks super cool. I have one of those helmets myself, and I also have a giant poster in my Star Wars room of the final shot of the Clone Wars, where you just see that helmet on a pike, or it's not on a pike, but it's in the sand or in the snow. Forgive me. It's in the snow. Matt will edit this, make me sound better. Or it's not on a pike, but it's in the sand or in the snow.
You just said forgive me so intensely that it felt like you were like praying almost.
Because I want to swear right now, but I'm trying not to.
Why?
I think that
I'm
was an
frustrated at myself. Like
that was an appropriate beg for forgiveness. That was embarrassing.
We've been too diligent on this episode too. I feel like I wanted to fight so bad for some reason. I feel like we have to take the gloves off a little bit. I think
it's in the snow. The last shot is of the helmet
Final
sticking out
answer?
of the snow, and it looks awesome.
Yeah, I figured that you were gonna say that, and that is a great trooper design. My favorite trooper of recent, I like the Shore Trooper a lot, so that is like my runner up. I just have runner ups consistently, but my favorite is the Death Trooper.
Oh, I'm glad someone said it.
Yeah, thank God. I was worried when you didn't say it, Max.
Specifically, once again, big fan of Rogue One. I love that specific scene as well when you first see them. I also love the color. Black might be my favorite color. If not, I guess black
Brutal.
is like, as an adult, I guess is my favorite color. But like as a kid growing up, it's green, which they also incorporated. So it's like the best of both worlds for me. It feels like something I would have designed.
Yeah, that reminds me of just how wonderful Star Wars is in terms of like how random you can become infatuated with such obscure things. Like Kit Fisto is one of my favorite characters just because I think he looks neat and I really ran with it. And you know, you have that thought once and then that's your favorite character for the next 20 years. And when Max and I and our other friend Dan were at Star Wars Celebration in 2022, we were at an event that had a silent auction. And we weren't really talking to each other about it, but we all ended up
Because it was silent.
basically. But
Sorry, that was cheap.
we all
That's what
ended
that
up
means.
purchasing different Death Trooper toys.
Yeah.
And then we all left and we were like, what'd you guys get? And we all just showed Death Trooper. And we're like, oh my God, do we love the Death Trooper now? Is this our favorite trooper design? We're going to collect Death Troopers for the rest of our lives? And we are.
Yeah. One of us, what was it? It was like one of us got like a Black Series, someone got a Funko, someone else got
Yeah, the
like,
Elite Series
the Elite
also.
Series, yeah. And it was funny because I think Dan was the last one to get it, and he was the one that we started to realize what happened, right? Because weren't we like all kind of like bidding on the same thing at one point?
Well, we were all bidding on everything because they had so much cool stuff. But that's like we only all got one thing, and it was all a Death Trooper, and it was all a different Death Trooper, and it was just such a fun moment.
Can you retell that story but say Matt instead of Dan?
We invited you to Celebration.
I know.
Okay, no explanations, just one word answer. What is your favorite creature
I
design?
feel like that's directed at me.
No, it's in all of us. It's in all of us. We all had a lot of things to say.
The Porg, by a lot.
Grogu.
Okay. I went with the Abonito species. Every
My
time
second
I
was
see 'em, I think
Lothcat.
They look good.
Remind me what the Ebonito are.
There's one in
Conalai.
no. There's
Sand.
one. There's one in Black Squadron. His name is Adi. He's also in the Poe comics. He looks like a hippo mixed with a fish, kind of.
Yeah, he's the
He's
one in The
also-
Force Awakens that says, "But no damage."
Yes.
Yeah, I remember him. Okay.
There's also another one in Canto Bight that points out Finn and Rose.
I went and told him you can't park your shuttle here.
Yes.
Oh my!
Yes.
Is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt also?
I
believe
believe
so,
so.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that was his cameo.
I will say about Porgs, they are the perfect blend of practical and CG effects, which we'll talk about later, but it's very important to blend those two because all practical is not good enough. It's 2023. We can make it digital also, and the Porg is the perfect example of blending them to make it better for the both.
All right. Well, Luke just forfeited his next topic. So,
I
Matt,
like that reasoning.
what's your favorite droid design?
My favorite droid design is just BB-8.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
I think it instantly was a classic from a teaser trailer, and I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of others, but I mean, it's BB-8.
Yeah.
You guys are
Or
both
BB.
saying BB-8, and I'm not allowed to say mine, just so we're clear.
I can say yours.
B2EMO from Andor. He's like a dog,
Yeah.
and he's always sad,
Oh, okay.
and he's so cute, and that guy pushes him over at the end and he starts the rebellion.
Him,
They have to throw the
him,
blanket over him to stop the hologram, right?
him acting like a dog is so good, or like a child, but like I think there's something again inherently very very sad about Andor, and the fact that he doesn't understand that Andor's mom is dead is like actually heartbreaking. And I think that's like what I think about a lot. It's like because that's like your worst fear is to be like, what if this, what if I don't know, something doesn't understand, and it's like heartbreaking, and it's to see it on screen, it like brings that fear to reality.
Yeah, that's the one moment that made me cry in Andor when Cassian says, "You have to come through for me," and
Yeah.
he says, "You always say that, and you always do." And it's like, oh, he's such
So
a
good.
tragic hero.
Yeah.
That is good. All right, last one. What is the best Disney era movie? Matt.
So good. I think this is going to come as no surprise since I've been talking about it the entire episode, but my favorite movie is Rogue One. It ranks really high within all my movies ranked together. I don't want to give that too much away because I feel like we talked about Return a little bit where that sits, and Rogue, it sits pretty high though. And so I think Rogue One does something that's great. It is the first spin-off movie. It has the challenge of also not having a crawl. Like I remember sitting in that theater and being like, "What are they gonna do?"
I know, because we knew there wasn't going to be a crawl, and
Yes.
everyone was talking about what they're going to do instead of, because they can't just open it like a regular movie. But they did that perfectly with the hard
Yeah.
noise.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. They did such a good job. I mean, not to mention, obviously, I guess, like, right, the biggest fact is that they killed the entire cast with no chance of coming back unless they did a prequel, which they did with Andor. But, like, that's a huge swing for a big blockbuster movie. There's no franchise potential. You know, they killed off everybody. I think it came out as a huge surprise. We get Saw Gerrera as well. We get the Death Troopers.
Very underrated. I love Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, so do I, and his voice. And we also get Krennic, which I think is a really good villain. We get
Krennic is great.
Death Troopers.
yes, Death Troopers are great. Galen Erso is so interesting as well.
CG Tarkin.
CG Tarkin, CG Leia as well. Like those don't bother me. The Vader scene at the end, I think, and that's not even talking about like K2SO and like Alan Tudyk's great voice and like that comedy that comes through K2SO is so good. It's like C3PO, but like actually funny. I love C3PO, but like it's like him, but not necessarily annoying or nagging like 3PO is a little bit. I love Bodhi for some reason. I think he's great. I think that's an interesting defective pilot. Before we saw Force Awakens, even. Yes, I think Rogue One is not only a great Star Wars movie, it's a great movie in overall, and I think it fills in a very tiny gap. But I also love that era. Like in that Rebellion era, I think the Galactic War is great. Galactic Civil War is like my favorite era. And I think kind of playing around in that sandbox is fantastic.
And the ending is what's so satisfying because you know it's in that era, but you don't know exactly when
And then
until
you
the
see
last 2 seconds. And
Tantive
you're like,
Four?
this is the Tantive 4?
Yes,
And you're like, oh
exactly.
my God, this is moments before A New Hope.
Yeah, I love every little bit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great theater experience.
Yes.
Yes.
We went to go see it together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, where was I?
You were also there.
Oh, what?
Sorry, I have a picture with Luke with a stormtrooper at that premiere.
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of remember that now.
I'll
Yeah.
post it
Okay.
on our social.
Yeah. Check us out on Instagram. All right, Luke.
I went with The Last Jedi.
You see, I was afraid that was going to happen. There's only 5 movies that we can choose from, but mine is also The Last Jedi. So
I assumed this would happen. I'm a little disappointed because we were big Rogue One fans.
no, it's high. It's high up there. But The Last Jedi, well, Luke,
Well,
I feel like
yes.
I want you to explain it.
So when we're talking about Star Wars,
All right,
I
stop. I'll take
especially
it from here.
I
That's set up.
especially have a hard time separating my feelings for movies and TV shows from my feelings for Star Wars movies and TV shows.
Mhm.
And so, like I talk about when I talk about Jedi Survivor, I love it as a game. I don't really like it as a Star Wars game. And so with other
Spoilers
movies,
for Luke's Rogue One
Right,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
weeks to come.
So with The Last Jedi, I of course love it for what it brings to the lore and the characters that are developed through it, but it's also the best directed, the best written, the best shot, the best effects, the best creature design. It just fires on all cylinders at its maximum, and it's my favorite.
And kind of going off of the legacy of George Lucas and constantly advancing with him, I feel like it was much more like the technology aspect of it. But I really appreciated the swings that Rian Johnson took. A lot of people don't. Obviously, The Last Jedi is probably one of the most polarizing pieces of Star Wars that's out there today. But I really like it. I really like the guts that he had to make some of the choices that he did. Killing off Snoke in that throne room, I think, was just amazing. I mean, we just talked about that scene 2 seconds ago, so I'm not going to rehash it. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get too into my feelings versus digital versus practical effects, but Rian Johnson also does a tremendous job of using practical effects and digital effects at the same time. In the bonus features for The Last Jedi, I remember watching it when it came out, 5 years ago, that he wanted to do as much practically as he could, and they really tried to get the crystal foxes on Crate to be practical with like real dogs dressed in crystal costumes, and he just never got it to look exactly the way he wanted, so he made it all digital, and I think that was such the right decision because we'll do an episode soon about the intricacies between digital and practical effects and when they are used appropriately and not, but
That's
Rian
a
Johnson
great-
does
yeah.
it great in The Last Jedi.
That's a great example of using something digitally. I think they do like really good. There's like that moment in the trailer when they look up and something's wrong. You sense it
Mm-hmm.
in the movie too. I like Last Jedi a lot.
All right, so that's everything that we have for this episode. Let us know what you think. Feel free to reach out to us on social media. You can find myself on Twitter at MaxterJedi.
You can find me at Filmowski.
And you can find me at Kit Fisto blog, and you can find us at Force for Thought across all socials.
And let us know what you think. Were we on the nose? Are we completely wrong? What were your favorite scenes, characters, moments, TV shows in this new era of Star Wars that we get to live in? Let us know.
Did
Thanks.
you enjoy us not arguing or not?
More arguments to come.
Tell us, Sammy.